And it seemed that every time there was a setback, there was broader support for the movement.
But we had the biggest march in Hobart that I had ever seen. Personally, it would be fruitless if I stopped fighting some force. And I also know that fighting the fight here means that justice here, I can help for justice over there. And all these fights are connected to this one evil. Madeleine, I'm Cece. Thanks so much for coming here. I'm part of the LAMA collective, and we're looking to do some interviews with people, a little bit of alternative media to challenge the mainstream media narratives that we get fed all the time. So we brought you in here today to just talk about your recent experiences being on the flotilla. And we know that this isn't your first time doing something like this, and so we just wanted to bring you in, have you chat about your recent experiences and talk about maybe the differences you've seen and like why you keep doing this, why you still feel a drive and passion to do this as someone from Tasmania, like the bottom part of the world.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think it's great that we do want to challenge the dominant narrative and that we do want to challenge mainstream media. This is a really super important initiative, so I'm very happy to be part of that. And my history in activism, people say, well, what got you into activism? I think some of us are just born with an activist kind of a soul where we challenge the dominant paradigm, we challenge what we see in the world, we ask questions. Well, we're the ones born to be activists. Yeah. I think everybody has the potential to be an activist, and some people just follow on more with it over time. So it's been my mode of operation since my teenage years. I've been challenging what I see around me and looking for ways to express myself and being an activist. I'm also professionally a ship's captain, so I have focused more on maritime activism. And in my early 20s, I first went to Palestine. I crossed the border over the L.A.M.A bridge from Jordan, which at that time just meant I got a West Bank permit. And as far as Jordan was concerned, I was still in Jordan because the West Bank was considered part of Jordan at that time. Yeah. So I saw the Intifada years in the 1980s. I saw how Palestinians were treated. I saw that their lands were being taken from them, and I saw the kind of control that the Israeli state had over the lives of Palestinians and how they were basically being, in Gaza, they were being held in an open-air prison. Yep. And that really stuck with me. I grew up in Australia where there are so many freedoms and...
Yeah, that would have been very confronting.
Well, our freedoms are definitely hard-won freedoms where people definitely suffered so that we enjoy the freedoms today. And I acknowledge that Aboriginal people suffered a lot so that settler culture can be so rich and so varied. I'm conscious of that. But when I saw what was happening in Palestine and being half Egyptian from the Middle East, I felt that connection, and I thought that that was an issue that I wanted to keep in touch with. And this Gaza Strip is not only blockaded by land, so the Israelis don't just control the land borders, they also control access to the sea. And Gaza is a coastal state. It's about the same size as Bruny Island. I mean, it's tiny, and 2 million people. It's hard to imagine.
Yeah, I went to Bruny for the first time earlier this year, and all I could think was, oh my goodness, there's 2 million people on this land mass on the other side of the world. How is this even possible? How is this happening? How can we help this? Like, this is unfathomable. Yeah.
So that coastal access is super important to these people. It's a life source of fishing is really important. It's a way of trade, and it's an access that's been denied since the early 2000s. So there have been various initiatives over the years to break the sea blockade of Gaza. And some of the early initiatives actually arrived in Gaza, and people were able to deliver aid. But the Israeli occupational forces have been stronger and stronger in blocking the aid from entering. And in 2010, with the Mavi Marmaru, which was a very large ship, mostly with Turkish activists on board, as they were arriving in Gazan waters, the Israelis descended by helicopter on board the ship and shot and killed 10 activists on board that ship.
Oh dear.
So that was a terrible moment for the movement. It was a huge impact, obviously, on the people on board, and also kind of strengthened the resistance. And it made people realise, okay, this is a really dangerous mission that we're going on, but it's obviously a really important one and the one that the Israelis really want to block. So we must keep going. And in 2016, they decided to have a women's boat to Gaza. And being a ship's captain with sailing experience and activist who cares about Palestine, you know, I was part of a fairly small pool of people, and I also happened to be in the Mediterranean at that time. I also work in migrant rescue in the Mediterranean most years, so that's why I definitely always have one foot in the Mediterranean, even though I live in Lutruwita, Tasmania. So I became part of that movement, the Freedom Flotilla Coalition, and was the captain of the women's boat to Gaza in 2016, where we sailed from Barcelona with 13 women on board, including a Nobel Peace Prize winner and a whistleblower, former colonel from the US military on board. Then we stopped along the way in Corsica and Sicily, changing some crew out, and we sailed on towards Gaza. Like many of the other missions, we were intercepted by the occupational forces. Vessel was seized, we were taken hostage, and we were thrown into Israeli prison. And I sort of thought, well, I probably wouldn't do that again. I felt like I had made my statement against what was happening in Gaza, but this acute phase of the genocide, which has been going on since October 7, 2023, that really strengthened my resolve to remain true to the people of Palestine and to do what I can to defend their rights.
LAMA is a collective of activists and artists that are bringing local stories and a real-life social centre to Nipaluna, Lutruwita. A place where we can freely gather, organise and be inspired as we work towards a world free of oppressive systems. The vision includes a community garden, co-working area, tool and book library, storage, art studio, all ages live gigs and drag bingo. Plus free tea and lots of fun. We'll be sharing interviews, essays, music, poetry and more from the ground in Nipaluna, the country that holds us today and has held the oldest continuing culture in the world. This is Palawa land, and their cultural flame continues to burn. LAMA is the soil from which a thriving grassroots network can grow. And we promise that all the money you give us, which you can make tax deductible by the way, we will be spending on putting physical roots down in Nipaluna.
And the global movement has been growing. I was in the Mediterranean. The global Samud flotilla was being activated. Of course, I got involved. I was sailing boats from the European ports to Tunisia, which was going to be the headquarters for the global Samud flotilla, and preparing the boats for the voyage. There's a lot to do to get a boat ready.
Yeah, no surprise there.
And you can imagine the boats that are being bought, they're not the best boats in the world because there's a reasonable chance that you're not going to get them back. So some of them were in quite poor condition. They had mechanical issues. The water tanks weren't big enough. The sails needed repairs. There were problems with the navigation systems, with the electricity, and we had to install cameras and safety equipment and all of these things. So that was what I was involved in Tunisia. And also, you know, you're doing it in a country where you're not familiar with the landscape, with where you can buy things. And it was such a huge movement, thousands of people involved, 500 people on board the boats from 40 different countries.
Wow.
50 boats coming in from everywhere. It was a huge thing to mobilise.
Yeah, a huge feat. Yeah.
And it was interesting with the Global Sumud Flotilla because initially it was quite a localised movement in a way. It was very much a leftist movement. It was supported by people who were already supporting Palestine. And then there were kind of repeated setbacks along the way. And it seemed that every time there was a setback, there was broader support for the movement, which I found really remarkable. And it became a kind of a mainstream thing. People were talking about the Global Sumud Flotilla. It became a union issue. It became an issue so powerful that Italy was saying, if you stop the Sumud Flotilla, we will shut the country down. We will shut Italy down.
Yeah.
Like a whole economy.
Yeah.
It was huge.
Yeah, it was incredible. Yeah.
And each time there was a drone strike or some kind of technical delay, more and more people started following the flotilla. So that was an interesting phenomenon.
Yeah, not that many people interested in the waters and boats, and then all of a sudden, wow, everyone's behind you, everyone's watching from our phones.
Yeah. From people's phones. And on the mainstream media in Europe as well, it actually got quite some credibility.
Wow.
But definitely it was a social media driven initiative. And also maybe because everybody was kind of responsible for their own story. There wasn't a centralized office telling the story.
Yeah.
Every participant was telling their story. And so the spider web of communication was really vast and tentacles reaching everywhere.
Yeah. Lots of connections.
Yeah. So many different countries involved.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't actually going to sail on any of those boats, but when the vessel that I did sail on came kind of online, the Conscience, I don't know if you know the story of that ship.
I don't.
It's actually an old ferry and not the boat that you might choose to do this voyage on. And they had tried, the Freedom Flotilla Coalition had tried in March to sail from Malta to Gaza.
Yes, I did know that.
And when the ship was off the coast of Malta, 14 miles from Malta, it was bombed by Israeli drones.
Yeah.
And that has been proven now that was actually the case. And they blew big holes. It's a steel ship with a big, thick deck.
Yeah.
And they blew holes like this big in the foredeck of the vessel. It's amazing that nobody was injured.
Yeah.
And it took out quite a bit of machinery, and the ship also was taking on water. So that mission had to be cancelled.
Yeah.
And the ship was towed to Turkey and some repairs were made. The repairs were made, and then suddenly the ship was available for this mission, and they were desperately seeking a captain with a license. And so
here you are.
There I was, yes. And unlike the other boats in the Sumud Flotilla, this was much larger, and we had a capacity for up to 100 people. We ended up sailing with 92 people on board from 25 different countries.
Yeah.
And definitely a mixed bag.
No surprise there.
Yeah, really, people from all different walks of life. But the main focus of our ship was media and medics, because those are two groups of people that have really been targeted and, murdered on a large scale during the acute phase of the genocide. So those people who would normally have some protections under the rules of engagement in war were being targeted.
Yeah.
And we saw it again and again, and the media not only being targeted but being excluded, and medical facilities being absolutely targeted by Israeli occupational forces in war crimes that should never have been allowed to happen. So we were sailing with these teams on board to say that the rest of the world is on side with the Palestinian people, and that we won't be threatened and we won't be cowed by the actions of this destructive and colonizing force. And we also had some teams of activists on board, and we were people from 25 different countries suddenly thrown together on this ship with, no cabins. Everybody just had to sleep between the seats. It was an old ferry, no showers. only a couple of toilets that worked.
Yeah.
And yeah, certainly not a terribly comfortable vessel.
No, it's almost like being an activist anywhere. You're going to deal with the dregs of what you can find and anyone who's there to help. But
I wouldn't consider them the dregs.
No,
but it's definitely a mixed bag. Yeah, it's really a mixed bag, and people are really super passionate.
Yeah.
So they're not necessarily super organised, and it's not a very cohesive group when you start off.
Yeah, yeah.
But if you've been in a forest camp or any of those situations, a bit of adversity creates some social adhesion.
Yeah.
So when we started to have rough weather and things like that, it actually strengthened us as a group.
Yeah.
And doing lots of drills because we were very aware that we could be bombed at any time, and you know, if they were to attack us with drones, we only have each other to rely on.
Yeah.
So the team did come together, but it's also difficult when you don't even have a common language. So there were quite a few people with different languages on board and different priorities.
Yeah, of course. And correct me if I'm mistaken, but there didn't seem to be a lot of people with sailing experience necessarily, or like a big background in sailing.
I think that's exactly right. You're definitely not wrong there. So
that would have been extra hard to navigate as someone who's got the biggest background in sailing and maritime.
It is difficult to get people to understand all the risks that are involved without sounding like an alarmist. But to try and get people to have a safety consciousness and to understand all of the perils that are potentially there.
Yeah.
And that was very much true for the whole of the Global Samud Flotilla. Each of those 50 boats that sailed with the flotilla maybe only had one or two people with sailing experience on board and an awful lot of people without sailing experience. So it's a huge undertaking when you think that they're all sailing quite close together at night. Yeah. It was a lot to ask from the teams.
With boats that aren't the best either. So not
sailing into a war zone.
Yeah. Oh, geez, it's just layers. Layers upon layers.
Yeah, so there was a lot of bravery.
Yeah.
There was a lot of coordination that was involved. It wasn't all smooth sailing. There was rough weather. There were a lot of limitations on what each boat could carry as far as fuel for cooking, fresh water, even the battery power for the communication devices and lights and simple things like that. So I think there were a lot of extremely brave people, many of them who were also engaging in activism for the first time.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness.
So a huge first action for a lot of people, and also to come into confrontation with a really heavily militarised force, one of the most heavily militarised in the world. So it's not a friendly Tasmanian police officer, or unfriendly or reasonably friendly, but someone whose culture you share and someone who's bound by certain codes of conduct. You're suddenly against an occupational force that you know is massacring a population that is guilty of a genocide. You're dealing with a completely different caliber of force against peaceful activists. So very intimidating. The interception was very frightening for many people. It's not the first time I've been intercepted by the Israeli occupational forces. I feel like I felt reasonably confident in my own conduct, and it is a terrifying experience. But no matter how confident you feel, you're on a ship. It's the middle of the night. We were quite close to the entrance to the Suez Canal. There was a lot of shipping traffic around. Suddenly there were helicopters above us, people descending down cables from the helicopters, taking over our ships. They're coming crashing into the bridge, which is where we drive the ship from, with bright lights, with laser sights on their guns, commanding that I stop driving the ship and stand down. And obviously you do feel extremely threatened. You are threatened in that moment. You are under threat. But I was able just to disengage some things on the bridge to make it more difficult for them to drive the ship. And I did stand down. We all stood down. We all behaved in a non-violent manner. We did a lot of non-violence training on board, and that was something else that was quite new to a lot of people, the people who haven't been activists before.
It's a completely different language.
It is.
Yeah, learning how to interact with law enforcement. And law enforcement who you're not familiar with. Like you said, a different culture, different language, different environment with guns. Like I've never had someone point a gun at me, but so the non-violent training would be completely different as well. Yeah.
And people who are extremely passionate about the Palestinian cause. And their first moment where they can directly express their frustration directly towards the perpetrators of a genocide, for some people it's very difficult to control themselves. It's a really, and in a moment of terror, personal terror, torn from their sleep, most of them, and called up on deck into the positions that we had agreed on, where everybody would be wearing their life jacket and sitting in particular places. So we were in affinity groups with people that we knew and shared a common language with, and had some cohesion with, to take care of each other. But for some people, people express fear in different ways, and some people found it very difficult to be calm and non-violent in that situation.
Yeah, completely understandable too. Yeah.
It was, for me, it was a really beautiful movement to be part of, because it did bring so many people along with us. There were so many people who felt vested in the Global Samud Flotilla and the 1,000 Madeleines and the Freedom Flotilla. I don't even like to use the different names for them, because for me it was all one movement. We're all activists trying to break the siege of Gaza, trying to create a sea corridor so that Palestinian people have access to the sea. And it was really wonderful to see that there is that much positive sentiment in the world, and that so many people would make a stand, and that people would be willing to strike and to march on the streets and to shut down cities all over Europe. And I know that it also had a big impact in Australia as well.
Yeah, definitely.
But we're just so much further away.
Yeah. Yeah. But you weren't here, obviously.
True. I didn't see it.
But we had the biggest march in Hobart that I had ever seen. And the biggest marches that are usually here are for the forest, as you probably know. But there was about 11,000 people here who marched on that global action day for Palestine. And that was really heartening to see, because it feels like a lot of people are focused on, the Tasmanian forest blockades, which is so important. But seeing that solidarity with the people on the boats as well, I was like, wow, this is awesome. This is a global movement that everyone is getting behind. Yeah. So you weren't alone on the Tasmanians.
No, and that is really reassuring to know that Tasmanians are thinking globally as well.
Yeah.
Because we can be quite insular here at the end of the world, where life is reasonably peaceful. It is also, for me, when I look at the news, and I'm looking at what's happening in Congo, I'm looking at what's happening in Sudan and what's happening in Ukraine still, it's difficult to choose one conflict to be more vested in than another. But the scale of the genocide and the obviousness of Gaza kind of makes it, if we can't win this, if people power can't be heard, if the governments and their complicity won't be moved by the people here, then we need to win one. And I think, yes, we need to do the same thing for Sudan. It's just, I think, it's not as clear-cut in Sudan. Not that no war is ever really clear-cut, but I feel that we can't just abandon the situation in Gaza. Ceasefire, it's such a flimsy tool, and it really doesn't mean the end of the war. It doesn't mean the end of the oppression. It doesn't mean that Palestinians now will decide their own destiny, that there's not self-determination, there's not even provision for a Palestinian state. So the ceasefire is not something we can really celebrate, especially as the Israeli occupational forces continue to break it, continue to bomb Gaza, continue to kill civilians. They're not permitting aid to enter. And to keep a population dependent on aid is what has been happening in Palestine for far too long. Palestinians should have their own economy. They shouldn't be dependent on aid, just as any population should be able to have its own independent, thriving economy.
Yeah, completely agree. And something that I've been thinking of while you've been talking is that we see that all the pressure from all the parts of the world, like you said, European towns were being shut down. There was thousands and thousands of people marching here. And it is a global movement, and it feels like there's a lot of hope that's being brought to the table amongst all this death and despair, which is really heartening. And I was wondering if after your mission, after the missions with all the boats, did you feel that sense of hope after being with people? What was your response after that and seeing all these people getting behind each and every one of you, not just you, but the Palestinian cause and the desire for a Palestinian statehood and freedom?
Yeah. I actually found it a bit overwhelming that it was such a, or it is, and continues to be such a huge galvanizing force. I think it is a symbol of hope.
Yeah.
And at the same time, over this last few months, I have really seen a rise of the global right as well, and of fascism, and that even here in Tasmania, that there are right-wing marches happening in the streets in Launceston. I couldn't believe it. I was like...
Yeah, there is only about maybe 5 of them there, but it does exist.
But the fact that it exists, yes, I was really surprised, and it's happening in the UK, it's happening all across Europe.
Yeah.
And so nothing makes a team stronger than having a common enemy. So in a way, we hopeful people can maybe rally together stronger because we know that we really have to fight for survival and fight for the freedoms that we enjoy now because they're under threat. And in a way, I think that because we have enjoyed such a peaceful, healthy, prosperous existence for the last, say, 50 years or so, many of us have never really suffered hardship, and so we've become complacent about all of the privileges that we have, and we haven't had to fight for them, and so we don't realise how important it is to protect them. But if we don't stand together and stand strong, those privileges and the wonderful freedoms that we have will be taken away from us.
That's right. And I think with the rise and the far right that we're seeing now, it's obvious to me at least that it's been this insidious force that's been lurking for a while, and now it's starting to rear its head into the public. And I wonder if you would agree with me in your years of activism. Have you seen this sort of happen before, where there's this lower, that it's been lurking and now it's just starting to point its head? And if you know of ways that we can combat that it's not just being hopeful together, like there's actual direct actions that we can do, how we can band together?
Well, I know that there was a time, because as I was saying, I work in migrant rescue.
Yeah.
And there was a time when there were actually far-right groups that got their own ships to protest against rescue ships.
Oh, wow.
And they were kind of engaged in combat with the rescue ships and preventing rescue ships from leaving port.
Oh, my goodness.
It was quite a short-lived movement.
Yeah.
But the anti-migration sentiment is really strong. And I think that's the anti-immigration is the front on which we need to fight the far right, because the far right, it's based on fear. Fear that people are different, fear that people are taking your jobs, fear that people have different values, therefore it's incompatible with the Australian way or whichever culture it's embedded in. And we need to break that down. We need to continually ensure that people are not excluded because of their racial heritage, cultural heritage, the language that they speak, or gender diversity. We need to ensure that there is inclusion all the time. And we need to stamp out all the little fires. That's what I think, because we can't let it become a front. We can't let it become the far right front. As long as it's spot fires, we can stamp on it. Yeah. And when there are little outbursts, like it's happens in Tasmania in these isolated incidents, I think we have to be all over it. We can't allow it to grow.
Yeah. I'm thinking make them embarrassed, make them ashamed that they even have these ideas. It's like, we're meant to be here to unite, to care for each other. What are you doing? Go away.
But they're also humans, and
that's right.
And they've grown those ideas maybe because they haven't been exposed to alternative ideas, and being afraid of other cultures or not understanding other cultures or what another culture has to give it's a kind of a fearful response. And so maybe there just needs to be more exposure as well and more conversations. And especially when a young person is expressing really racist views or strong nationalistic views, then maybe it's just a question of exposure and conversations and acknowledging that they are individuals and that individuals can change. Thank goodness individuals can change. Yeah. And we can't just hate a large group of people because they're all wearing that particular T-shirt or they have that particular tattoo and they identify with that particular group, because that will never invoke change. No. Change is gradual, change is an insidious thing that we can create. Yeah. And I think we have to combat the fear that we have of the far right, see people as individuals, find what we have in common with those individuals. And I know, like, in protests, I really like being the peacekeeper. So the people who have a view that they think is entirely opposite to mine, and then being the person to talk to those people and honestly listening to people and letting them express their views, their sentiment, until they kind of talk themselves into a situation where you realise, oh, well, this is something we have in common. There is something here that we have in common, even if it's just that we're both standing on the same ground or we both feel cold or we both, there will always be something that you have in common with the other person. And from that, you need to build a common understanding. But when we only see our differences, it's pretty hard to make change on an individual level. And it's also terrifying what being part of a hated collective can do, because if you're a member of the Israeli occupational forces and everybody around you is a member of that force and you don't have any contact with anybody outside of that, you're kind of self-justifying your behaviour and you don't have any checks.
It's just festering there.
And everybody hates you. You go on holiday to Thailand, everybody hates you. All the hostels say no Israelis. So you're in this kind of isolated enclave for life. And you can be as violent and as cruel because everybody inside this group is like that, and you don't have exposure to other views and you don't have a way to escape, really. And I think that is a terrifying aspect of war or any kind of tribalism, where you identify so strongly with one group that you have your own code of conduct and it can get crazier and crazier and less controlled. So how to break that down when it's reached the level of a genocide, how to break it down when it's like the situation in Sudan where Sudanese people are murdering Sudanese people. It's really that sense of belonging to one group and not having any checks outside. That's a huge issue. Here in Tasmania, if we can just confront somebody from the far right or somebody who expresses racist views one-on-one, we're at a much easier starting point than trying to take down a genocidal force. I don't really know how we do that. I don't know how we reintegrate people, the next generation of people. How do we do that?
They're holding so much trauma in them as well, on all sides. How will we create that community, that environment where there is some understanding?
Because now I feel like when I meet an Israeli in Tasmania, when you say, where are you from? Israel, they stiffen. They're ready for the attack. They're ready to be seen as somebody to be hated.
Yeah, yeah.
And we can't be held entirely responsible for the actions of our government. There are loads of actions of the government of Lutruwita, of Australia, that I do not approve of. And I don't want to be held responsible for those. So I think we need to continue to respect the individual, acknowledge and try and change the individual, because to change the government or the state is a huge issue.
And we need lots more people to command them to do so.
Yeah.
I guess what I was thinking while you were saying that is changing who they're hating or trying to challenge or trying to change, redirect that anger into commanding the government to do better, to put sanctions on Israel, to stop sending weapons overseas, not someone who's arriving because they're seeking asylum, not someone who's a different skin colour. Engaging in that changing of the narrative that they're not the person that's caused you to have to rent all the time, unable to afford groceries, all those cost of living issues. That is like one of the main driving forces of the anti-immigration argument now. Yeah, that's what I was thinking when all these marches were happening across the state. It's like, how can we redirect this anger? Because they're angry, rightfully so. It's hard. It's becoming increasingly hard to live.
But then after the march or the protest, they'll go and have a kebab from the kebab shop. Which, kebab shop didn't exist in Tassie 25 years ago. So we celebrate so many aspects of multiculturalism. We love the music. But to understand that those things come because we have a multicultural society.
Yeah. That was actually one of the first things that I thought of when I was watching all the acute, how do you describe it? The acute
phase of the genocide.
Acute phase of the genocide unraveling on my phone is that the same thing happened here. It's just there was no phones and I wasn't around and I'm reaping the benefits of it.
Yeah.
And now there just wasn't heavy machine guns and tanks rolling around everywhere. It's a lot more like close quarters.
But one thing that did really strike me when I was speaking to Israeli soldiers was looking at them, the young people that have their holidays in Thailand, that straighten their hair, that work out at the gym. There was one of the prison officers, and she had girl power tattooed on her arm, and I was like, oh my God. What does girl power mean to her?
Yeah.
And what does girl power mean to me?
Yeah.
I mean, we're all living in the same world, and we just have such different perspectives. And I thought to myself, if I had been born Israeli, if I had grown up in that society, and if I was 24 years old and had girl power tattooed on my arm, what would I be like? Yeah. Would I be part of the Israeli Defense Force? Would I be strong enough to fight against this? It's really easy to be a rebel in Australia where we have all of these freedoms. I'm not risking my life most of the time. Yeah. I'm not a social pariah. I can still own property. I can still get a job. I can still do all of these things. But would I be strong enough in Israel to say no to fighting? Would I defend Palestinian people? Would I go against my culture, against my country? Would I be a strong enough person? Or would I be washed along with it like most of these people are? And I just wonder, if this had happened in Australia, who would be on the right side of justice?
And the social forces here, growing up as a young person, are so gripping. They're so strong, especially with phones and like the need for connection and the need to be available all the time is so strong here. It would be overwhelming in an active war zone, in a place that's militarized all the time, that's got active propaganda, that's in that little bubble that we spoke about before. It would be incredibly difficult to push against that. And like you said, would I?
Yeah.
I don't know. And how oh God, it's like a hypothetical that I can't answer, right?
Yeah. But it's obviously an extremely strong force. And when you have a perceived common enemy that you've been schooled into believing that that is an existential threat to you, that Hamas is going to kill you. If you don't fight back against Hamas, Hamas will destroy you, destroy your way of life, will kill you. When you go to a music festival, you might get shot down. You might be just sitting in your kibbutz and Hamas is going to come in and kill you. And if that is so ingrained and you hear that in the media all the time, and it's what unites you as a nation and also, like, you know, a reasonably small nation of people, and foreign governments are willing to give you all of these weapons to fight against this evil, then and you believe that you're the chosen, God's chosen people, it's a lot of forces to make you behave in a particular way, and you would have to be an incredibly strong individual to fight against that.
Yeah.
We did have 4 Israelis on board the Conscience, incredibly strong people who faced very different risks than we did because they weren't being, they hadn't entered the country illegally because they have the legal right to be in that country, but they faced criminal charges for their involvement in pro-Palestinian activities. So there are some people who've turned their back on Israel, but they're few and far between because it takes an incredible strength and probably an incredible network of people to support them in that decision.
Right. Yeah, because not just the criminal charges, but the social stratification, the family and friends, they just extradite you. It would be incredible. So much admiration for those people. Wow.
So I think it is good to do some soul searching to think, how would I be in that situation?
Yeah.
What can I do to challenge people who are in that situation? How can we have those conversations? And to always be a little bit introspective in our own activism, like why do I believe this? What is this system of values based upon? Is it good and just? And is it out of date? That's why I really like being around young activists, because sometimes I say things and I'm like, oh my God, I sound so antiquated. And that is just so not appropriate anymore. And things have changed and there are new ways to look at the world and different ways of being in the world. And I really want to keep that part of my mind active and open and keep challenging myself. And that's an important part of activism, that we do need to look at ourselves and the structures that we work within as well. So.
I've also found those intergenerational relationships in my activism so helpful. I've got a friend in Brisbane who's in his late 70s and he was around for the anti-Vietnam War stuff in Brisbane. And the story he tells me and the fight that he tells me and just him still fighting to this day, it's inspiring. It's incredible. And, you know, you can look at it 2 ways. Oh my gosh, he's still fighting the fight. That's awful. Or he's still fighting the fight. Like, we can do this together. It's not just going to end one day. Like, we can pass this torch on to inspire each other. Yeah, that's greatly put.
I was talking to an activist friend just the other day, quite a well-known activist in Tasmania who shall remain unnamed. And they said, I don't feel hopeful. I don't feel like we're going to win, but I'm not going to stop fighting. So I'm not sure that we can combat all of these forces of evil, but that's not going to stop me from keeping on trying.
No, it's sort of, personally, it would be fruitless if I stopped fighting some force. And I also know that fighting the fight here means that justice here, I can help for justice over there. And all these fights are connected to this one evil of imperialism, capitalism, colonialism, all the isms.
Except feminism and...
except feminism.
There are actually a few good isms, but there are an awful lot of bad ones.
Well, I think that's fine. It's like you said, an intrinsic desire. Some people, it's just in them and you can't stop it. You've got to keep going, even if you don't think you'll win. But there's not sort of one win. There's lots of little wins that you have to keep reminding yourself of. And
in a way, like, having a struggle keeps us hopeful. It gives us a reason. Because complacency is I don't think complacency is a very comfortable place for humans to be.
No.
I think it's actually kind of melancholy with being complacent, whereas feeling like there's a goal to strive towards, I think it might be our natural condition that we do strive, and rather than striving to be competitive or to dominate, if we strive for betterment, it's a pretty good idea.
Yeah. Especially in our local areas, it's an easier way to get into it as well.
Yeah.
And then maybe one day we can all go to the Mediterranean and get on a boat and then break the blockade.
Well, hopefully there won't be a blockade. Hopefully there will be access for Palestinian people to the sea, which is their right.
This morning I was talking to someone and we were talking about a friend of a friend who said, I'm just not sure how I feel about the conflict, the Israel-Palestine conflict. You know, both sides are pretty bad and I don't really know what to support because I don't really want to get involved. And I was wondering how you would respond to someone who's on the fence, who's not quite sure, who focuses on the mainstream media mostly, and they see this unbiased opinion of you can't support war is bad. How would you respond to that sort of sentiment?
I think some people don't understand the history. So many people think that this acute phase of the genocide was just triggered by a single event, October 7, when Hamas committed a massacre of Israeli people. But it actually is much older than that, since 1947, and the Nakba, which was, it's a word that means catastrophe, when the Israelis displaced thousands of Palestinians from their homes. And from that time, Palestinian identity, Palestinian homeland has been under threat. So this is a multi-generational war where Israelis have continually encroached on Palestinian territory, denied Palestinian people their freedoms of movement, access to education, access to medical care, which in turn has created the rise of Hamas. And Hamas, I'm certainly not in favour of Hamas. I'm not in favour of the actions of October 7, but this is a multi-generational, long-term crushing of a population where their access to their borders has been denied, access to employment has been restricted. So it's been an open-air prison in Gaza where people were not free to move, where commodities were not accessible. Even the electricity was controlled. Access to fresh water was controlled. And so it was a population that was squeezed, and in response to that incredible pressure over years and years, there was this rise of Hamas and the Hamas attack in Israel, which triggered this acute phase of the genocide. So I think that people have to understand the longer history and understand that Israel is a state that was imposed on land that was Palestine. So Palestine was there. Israel was created as a homeland for Jewish people. So Israel, while Jewish people certainly have an extended history in that area, and Jerusalem is a very important city to Jewish, Muslim and Christian people, you have to understand that it was Palestine and Israel was superimposed on the Palestinian land. And so the Palestinians' homeland was changed at that time, and it's been shrunk over the years to these two areas of West Bank, which is now largely populated by Israeli settlers, and the Palestinian population is getting more and more squeezed as the confidence of settlers grows, and the Gaza Strip, which is just a tiny sliver of land along the coast.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Usually when someone comes to me like with the opinion of that, I relate it back to here, Australia, because it's easier to talk to people about things that they know, that they're familiar with. And I say, like we said before, this happened here. We know about colonization and the genocide that happened here, the almost complete genocide specifically in Lutruwita, Tasmania. And I find that that's another way of going, this happened just 200 years ago.
Yeah.
We're reaping the benefits of it now.
Yep.
Yeah. Settlers, descendants of settlers are reaping the benefits now. Yeah. So that's a great way to bring it back to the history of it all. Yeah.
But I think we do it too, and we need to check that in ourselves, that we think that right-wing people are lesser than us. They're dumb, they're stupid, their ideas are stupid. But there are many really well-educated people who have very strong right-wing views, and many successful people, and maybe even compassionate members of the community in their own community, maybe upstanding members of institutions that we respect. And yet their views are completely different to ours. And so it is interesting that we do the same thing. And the way we talk about police officers, or we can just hate them all. They're all cops are bastards. Yeah, ACAB. Well, you know what? I'm not sure that they are all bastards. I think that we have police because we kind of have become such a sick society that we need people to protect people from domestic violence and to respond to when all the windows get smashed in the mall on a Saturday night. Because we as community, we don't do that. So we've created the need for a police force, and then we hate them. It would be a much nicer society if we didn't have a need for a police force, or the police force weren't hated and they were much more treated like ambulance officers, because when the ambulance turns up, everybody's like, oh, phew, thank God the ambos are here. We're all going to be okay. But when the police turn up, there's this complete tensing, and something bad's going to go down and somebody's going to be blamed. It's not like, it could be, you know, that hello, 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 what's going on around here, like in the kids' TV show when the police turns up. It should be like that. And I think in smaller communities, the police, where they are accountable to the community, that's also really different. And so I try and challenge in myself this all the time with police and hating the police. And I'll tell a little story and then I'll finish. So I was in the Mediterranean working on the Louise Michel, which is a rescue vessel, a very interesting rescue vessel, sponsored by Banksy, the street artist. And it's a feminist, queer initiative.
Wow.
Run with a flat hierarchy and a vegan galley. Sounds amazing.
Wow.
Very, very anti-authoritarian. Very difficult to be a captain on a ship like that where they don't believe it. All right, well, that's another story. So we did a rescue. We had the rescued people on board. We arrived in a port, Porto Empedocle, which historically there haven't been particularly good relationships with the authorities there. The survivors were all disembarked. Normally the captain has to go and there's some questioning. I just chatted with the authorities at the end of the gangway, like the strip of, like the walkway between the ship and the shore. I chatted for a couple of minutes and they were like, oh, you know what, you don't need to come for questioning, it's okay. Oh, great. And I said, oh, it's kind of a shame that we won't get a chance to go ashore here in Porto Empedocle, because I hear it's a really nice town and it would be really nice to go and have a granita, which is like a shaved ice dessert that I really like. They make almond ones there, they're delicious.
Yeah.
And the police were like, okay, bye-bye, off they went. And 15 minutes later, they came back to the ship with enough vegan granita for all of the crew.
What?
And they came up to me and they said, one of them put his hand on his heart and said, thank you for the work that you do. And they gave us the granita and they left. And the crew were gobsmacked. Like, they couldn't believe that we'd had a friendly interaction with authorities. Not only that there had been an act of generosity and a heartfelt thanks.
Yeah.
So it's really good to break down those stereotypes and to break down the difference, because yes, they've chosen that job, but our vision of that position and their vision of that position might be completely different. And we call upon the authorities when we deliver rescued people. We say, okay, authorities, you need to be here to deal with these 500 people that we just brought that you didn't know were coming. And we expect you to be there on call to do this because it's your duty. It's a big expectation. And then we treat them in a hateful way, like all cops are bastards, even though we said, well, you better come here to deal with this. And then we should hate them. It doesn't seem productive. And so I hope that was an impactful experience for everybody on board. It certainly was for me. And everybody enjoyed the granita. It was delicious.
Yeah. Never had one. I'll have to try it. Yeah.
It's not good if you have a nut allergy.
Oh, no, I'm safe.
But they're delicious.
And I think what you were saying before is not saying that this group of people are stupid or demonizing them in that way, because I think that also does a disservice to us when we're trying to create a better world and saying that these people are stupid. No, they're smart. They're not just here because they're bigots, just cause. They're smart, they're intelligent, they know what they're doing, and treating them like equals in that way would make it easier to like respect and find that common ground, because you'd want to interact with someone who you would hope would understand you, and they could find a level of understanding with you as well. Yeah.
And we're not all the same. We are going to have different opinions, and we need to find a way to live and work together where those differences don't cause war, where those differences don't cause enslavement of people and genocides.
Yeah, you're right.
Right, big job.
Yeah, but
we're up to it.
We can do it. Us together, we can lead the charge.
I think we've got it.
Yeah, simple feat, I think. Yeah.
Can't be that hard.
I'll have to learn how to sail, I think.
Yeah,
that's
great. It's not that hard. Just like keep the wind.
Keep the wind
on the side. Just keep the wind on the side. You're recording us here.
Love it.
We're done. Do you want me to sing?
Yes, please.
Do you know I'm a rock star?
You're a rock star.
Yeah, I'm a fan.
Oh, you did.
Anna has merch from my band.
What was your band?
Hot Wogs.
Oh, that's awesome. Were you all dogs?
There's only two of us, but yes.
The leads. Is that why?
We're the leads. Well, there were only two of us.